Okay, we're watching the Real Season 2 because I like it. There's about to be a Season 3 for this, and we should probably get this off the way. So let's do it. The Under a Psychic Apparatus, the Real. The University of Theory and philanthropist Jack has demonstrated its capacity to apply even in cultures the distance from the West. So distant from the West. The need for a connection between the symbolic imagery and the real registers becomes essential for the formation becomes essential for the formation of the human psyche apparatus, enabling it to grasp everyday reality and adapt to culture. So imagination. Real imagine yep. The so-called Bor it's like Bormi not the independence of the three registers amongst themselves. Oh, Michael is the 32-year-old mother. Tenshin, I don't even know what that means. Tenshin, immigrant living in France, she protests the case of her 5-year-old daughter. SZ, she presents the case of her. Is her 5-year-old daughter having encounters with the monster? Because we know that they can see them. My daughter, unlike other girls her age, cannot see me. Cannot see me? What? Not in the sense that she is blind, but she cannot see me as her mother, nor anyone in human form, nor as a person? What do you mean? She gets scared when she sees me, saying all she sees are shapeless masses, geometrical. Okay, geometrical structures is not what a kid would be saying. And viscera covering the walls. Human bodies are purely made of visible muscles and organs. She says that I am a being devoid of reality, that I transmit nothing but horror and distrust, just like all the people who approach her and who speak to her with sounds that are nothing but terrifying noises. There is no way a 5-year-old is speaking like that. The following are images of representations of what the girl SZ has described in the sessions guided by Dr. Jack Allen Miller. The walls of the house. Jesus Christ. The face of the mental health care building. The facade. It's like a meaty house. The shape of the one doctor's attendants. The shape of one of the doctor's attendants. What the fuck? What the girl says is her mother. Oh, that's horrifying. That's creepy. That is horrendous. The girl was placed under observation and her care was discussed at the internal hypothesis on the psychoanalysis of the real in Borough Aries in the year 2000. Dr. Alexander Simard was invited and all the other material for the case analyzed was handed over to him in the US. Alright.
Jacques Lacan a présenté en 1966 l'un de ses schémas les
We're going back to this. Jack presented one of his most daring schemes in 1966. To understand the relationship of the knotting of the three registries, the R scheme. In this graph based on the homological of two opposite triangles, namely the representing of the imaginary, and the representative of the symbolics They appear in this drawing as approximation of a formulation presented on a projective plane. The idea behind the work of these two triangles is explained in the way that one of them is projected due to its proportional simulation with the other on the plane. Much like the shadow of a house is... Bro, this goes too fast. Much like the shadow of a house who is projected on the ground, according to the direction of the sun's rays. In the plane which Lacan initially conceives as a sphere. No. Where the triangles of the symbolic and the imaginary obey the response of not fulfilling the fifth axiom of Euclidean geometry. In this way, by breaking those 2 points towards the infinite horizon of the curve, we can obtain this known as the Mobius swap. Mobius swap. What the fuck? And then it just dies. A non-ornatable surface with a single side and a single edge, which gives the impression of having an inner and outer side. That's weird. That's pretty cool, though. That's fucking dope. This is the strip of the real in the R scheme. In fact, the graph truly follows the shape of the cross. In this way, in this stage, the child receives the symbolic through language, social norms, the human construction of reality, and everything that pre-exists. In the triangle, we located the external triad of the perfect idea of the shelf, ladder 1, the complete protection of the maternal ladder M, and the power of omnipotence M, all of them meditated by the discourse of the big one, the big other letter A, that is the very symbolicist of the social construction. However, the child is still too rudimentally and perceives themselves and the world from their full biological potential in relation to their only basic needs, nourishment and sure, I can't fucking read today. Evacuation, I don't know. They only reflect in the register of the real and the world as it's represented to them, as it is, from the horrific void of senseless existence. The child does not see people; they only see the brutality of the nature. Dr. Alexander Simhard, head of the Department of Anomaly Reality Cases, presenting 007802 regarding the mirror stage. When we realize that a child perceives reality from the real, we understand that it occurs due to their biological incapacity to structure the images of the world through an adaptation process. Jock describes this in the mirror stage, which typically happens between 6 and 8 months in all children. But she's 5 and she still has it. However, due to intricacies related to J, the functioning of which was completely disregarded in childhood, possibly due to traumas, children could continue to perceive the world from the real into advanced stages. Wow, okay. When they have seen themselves in a mirror or any reflection. What the fuck? It could happen that they remain prematurely in an omnisciental perspection of their biological position, aligned from any meaning sense of their own human existence. What? The, refl- the reflection in the mirror allows the human being to be enchanted by what they see beyond in a virtual dimension. Seeing that captivates them, something they desire to obtain, and being virtual they can never truly touch. When they see their own reflection, they become enchanted by that image. This, this rising to possess it, and as they are unable to even touch it, desiring, they become alienated by the idea. They become alienated by the idea that this image is themselves. This is what Sigmundian Freund called the primary narcissism. That's fucking scary, but it's also pretty dope. However, this is not as straightforward as there have been cases in which certain individuals, even when seeing themselves in the mirror, fail to immerse themselves in the imaginary registration. Yeah. They do not achieve a that's pretty cool though. They do not achieve a fascination with their own image and never manage to knot the three registries. So instead of it being an all interconnected, it's not, it's just tangled. Living alongside beings they cannot explain in a world devoid of logic, social, and culture meaning. A place where everything in the purest and most brutal aspect of nature. It's fucking scary, but it's also like really dope. Which one coexists with masses of flesh and organs emitting strange sounds? That's kind of wild though. It's like one piece of your brain doesn't align, so now you can't see what they really are and you can't hear what they are, so now it's just this is what they are. Okay, we're gonna have to mute this so we can flash voices. Dr. Miller reports the case of Clara C., a 17-year-old teenager diagnosed with mirror impossibility and who has been trapped in the real since the age of 3. This is one of the few cases where the pupil continued to live, not succumbing to clinical decline, but the impossible record begins to take hold of her body. The following registers is an audio recording at 4 in the morning. Oh! In the room where she's confined. What the fuck? She has no eyes now, too. Whatever is sticking through her. Is that from the real? Huh. Sounded like somebody dying at the end, like they choked. But it was like screaming. Screaming and crying. Professor Miller has been invited by Dr. Simmons to present the impossible cases. Talking about the studies of Dr. Rains Bites, who despised being an opponent of shock. Lunkins analyzed techniques, conducted very precise studies regarding the issue of the impossible of the imagination in some infants. In fact, the studies always remained in line with what we work with as the real. Among his very precise observations in the 1950s, he noticed that some infants did not recognize faces. Their was sad, lost, and empty. They often cried a line. Over time, their activity diminished significantly. They were also exhibited stereotyped and repetitive movements as if they were trying to adapt to a world impossible to comprehend. They continued to see a hostile world and a world made of the real and isolated themselves from others. What do you mean, though, isolated by others? I mean, actually, it makes sense because if they're seeing all these meat creatures, I don't think they're gonna be, next to you. I think about Dr. Randspit's name was like 1950 something. It's an infant. Okay. A child has their mother in front of them and react without any kind of affection, repeating patterns incongruent with their age. This condition could be due to a physical impossibility to construct oneself in the world. In fact, this little child hasn't uttered a single word and doesn't understand basic social language. When the child turned 5, he was taken to a psychiatric research center in Cleveland, from which he disappeared. Dr. Spatz gave up 2 years later. So does the real just take them forever? Words of Professor Miller at the 1999 conference in New York. In the case I will present to you, you can observe you can observe with care that these infants for whom it is expected. They won't live beyond 3 years. At a certain point, if they survive this real and impossible reflex for social bonding, lose certain biological vision capabilities, and their eyes begin to be severely affected. They begin to lose their vision, but also their eyes are as a biological substance leaves those internal structures exposed due to the impossibility of communication in every sense. They don't show pain, nor were they able to convey their suffering. Even as teenagers, some of them couldn't communicate properly. They struggled to understand that there was something trying to interact with them. They were unaware of the concept of parents, doctors, authorities, friends, and so on. They were in a relative mental coma. What the fuck? I don't know, that's pretty dope, though. The situation was horrifying given the medical implications. They would become completely blind and they would gradually lose each of their sensory organs, since the external world would be of no use to them, essentially lacking any meaning for their existence as a human being. We found ourselves compelled to study these cases, but we had to come up with something to comprehend their precarious and rudimentary inner world. We need to see that real in some way, because when it's humanly possible in the first months of life, later in adulthood it is impossible to remember it due to the lack of imagination for images. Borman Vision of Registries, 1998, and they kind of got something going there. Through bioengineering in cooperation between the University of Paris and Texas Tech Universities, this device was created to account for what a person sees after surpassing the mirror stage. We tried to reconstruct the visions of the infants before they lost their total visual capabilities. The results were astounding because we were able to see the real for the first time in history. We managed to capture that real which appeared when human beings have not yet managed this to die. To die, I think, is the social communication. We have been able to see what hides in the fundamentals of the world. Oh my fucking god, bro. This is how human beings are truly in their most primal form, the species inhabiting the universe. We look like aliens, bro. We look like aliens. It is in social bond that the need for meaning that allows us to recognize shapes, faces, emotions, ideas, forms, and something else there. This is how one of the infants sees their parents and how the world that surrounds them. That's creepy, though. That is really creepy. This is how they see the hallways and the rooms, the places that are so familiar to people who have surpassed the mirror stages. What do you want? What do you want? This is how they see hallways and rooms, places that are so familiar to people who have surpassed the mirror stage. What the hell? There's even stuff hanging from the ceiling. It looks all decayed and rusted. The world is actually a strange place. We are alienated to a form that comforts us, that makes us feel at home, but there is nothing further from this. The question that arises is, what are we truly? Why do we insist on the purpose of existence? Damn. It's more noises of her like screaming and crying.
La fille a été trouvée dans une
The
maison
girl was found in
abandonnée
the
en
abandoned house on
périphérie
the
de
outskirts of Protected.
paraissant désorientée et ne comprenant ni obéissant à
Appearing
aucune commande.
disoriented and not comprehending or obeying any commands.
Elle a été emmenée contre son
She was taken against her will.
gré. Lors de l'examen,
Upon examination, the following was noted.
les éléments suivants ont été notés. Son visage était
Her face was deformed by streams of wires that protruded from her completely empty eye sockets.
déformé par d'étranges fils qui sortaient de ses orbites oculaires complètement vides. C'était un choc
It was a tremendous shock for the doctors who could hardly believe what they were seeing.
énorme pour les médecins qui avaient du mal à croire ce qu'ils voyaient. Elle semblait presque comme un
She appeared almost like a zombie, something biologically impossible.
zombie, quelque chose de biologiquement impossible, mais là elle était comme une étrange forme de
But there she was, like a strange form of life that did not react coherently to
vie
anything.
qui ne réagissait de manière cohérente à rien.
That's weird. Photograph of the police outside the house. Yeah. What the police found? What is that? Is it a bunch of wires? What is that? The girl was later cleaned up at the hospital. Oh, that's what she was. That was all the stuff coming off of her. So then that was all the stuff just on her, which is wild. Professor Ellen Miller has been invited by Dr. Simmer to present several cases, or severe cases, I guess. I can read. In philanthropist, particularly in his clinical child and absental branch. Drawing tests hold utmost importance for the understanding the psyche world of infants through these drawings. It is even possible to gain a more accurate insight into the social environment in which they are evolved. This is a drawing by a patient of Dr. Miller, a 9-year-old girl who has depicted her relationship with her sister. Wires. She's like dead pretty much, and then wires. The girl describes her sister as an entity without a soul, not recognizing her as a person, and even expresses fear at what she is becoming. In this drawing, the patient was asked to illustrate how her life would be if she continued living with her sister. What the fuck? Is she dead on the floor? Miller commented that in October of the year 2000 at the De La Riviere Hospital in Paris, that groups of supposed obsolescents arrived at the psychiatric wing with a very unusual physical condition. The cases were so unexpected that there was no medical consensus on their diagnosis. Patient identified as R, 18 years old. Yeah, and they're like wrapped in like wires or like branches. The parents of this teenager claimed to have found them in such a condition in the morning. When asked about his history, they mentioned that the teenager had exhibited facial wounds and his eyes had been blackened for the past 2 years. Patient identified as K, 16 years old. Damn. It's like wires or branches again. Or even veins. This girl was found wandering in the outskirts of a suburb neighborhood. The neighbor who took her to an emergency said that she had appeared in the neighborhood a few days ago. She's had her face covered in like black spots like wounds, and her eyes completely black, and she couldn't understand anything until those strange wires came out. What do you mean until the wires came out? Patient identified as S, 18 years old. This boy was brought in by his parents who witnessed the entire process of this strange condition afflicting their son. It looks like razor wire on his face. They mentioned that their son never learned to speak or communicate properly. He has been through many psychologists and philanthropists, but no one knew what illness he might have. They empathized that once he completely lost his sense of vision, strange wires that moved like elongated black fingers began to sprout from his eye sockets. So they have sentience, it seems like. In some more severe cases, those wires had sprouted from different parts of the body, completely immobilizing the person. It's coming all right out of his stomach. It looks like razor wires, but I also want to call them veins. A couple of patients had indeed arrived, completely consumed by the strange mass of wires, making their recognition impossible. These individuals even breathed responded to certain external stimuli to some extent, but in the terms of communication abilities, it was in no way viable. Professor Miller was able to speak with one of the afflicted individuals, the only one who had somehow managed to mechanically communicate in a language somewhat similar to French and English, albeit very rudely. Okay, hold on. What? Something? There is something horrifying. There is nothing. The experience of visualizing. Of life without existence. Miller classified these cases as a direct attack of the real on the body, so after so many years of mere impossibility, the function of the eyes would be senseless for the patients. Thus, Legge Mortadella would be emerged directly from the sockets of these useless eyes to seize the body, permanently finding a way to infiltrate it. Biblioteca okay, Jack Allen Miller. A 32-year-old Spanish citizen, volunteered for Professor Miller's project. She underwent experimentations with the individual prototypes of the real visualizer machine. So it completely covers her face and puts this thing over it too, which looks like it has oxygen. It has oxygen tubes, I'm assuming. Lorenzo was placed inside this RSI field generation machine. This drum began to spin inside at such speed that it manages to enter the reel. What the fuck? Why would you want to put somebody in the reel? Regarding the recording of the experiment presented at the conference. So they made a machine for people to enter, but they also made this makeshift suit for her to be safe, it looks like.
Nous allons commencer l'expérience, Lucia.
We'll start the experiment, Lucia. Let me know if you are ready.
Dis-moi si tu es prêt.
Writing from the inside already.
La machine a été allumée.
The machine has been turned on.
Tu devras attendre
You'll have to wait for a few minutes until the generator is in optimal operation.
quelques minutes jusqu'à ce que le générateur soit en fonctionnement optimal. N'oublie pas
Remember that you can request to be rescued from the visions of the real.
de demander à être sauvé des visions du réel quand tu le juges nécessaire.
Whenever you deem it appropriate. Is that okay?
C'est d'accord.
Writing from the inside. Yes, okay.
S'il te plaît, Lucia.
Please, Lucia, since your hands are free.
Puisque tes mains sont libres, décris-moi ce que
Describe to me what you're feeling so I can see it on the screen.
tu me dis pour que je puisse le voir à l'écran.
Probably nervous and scared. No response.
Prends ton
Take your
temps.
time, take it easy.
Prends-le calmement.
I see I distinguish some figures, but they are very dark. The place is strange. I would describe it as a place where everything is upside down. Also, I see a figure with no facial features. Completely stained with a substance I cannot define. It's looking at me and I would say it's identical to you. It reminds me a lot of you.
Est-ce que cette figure effectue
Does this figure perform any action similar to mine?
des actions similaires aux miennes?
Yes, in fact, I perceived a movement where one would think the mouth is at the same time he spoke.
Parfait. Raconte-moi
Perfect,
la
tell me more. There, wait. I feel a horrendous heat on my face, it's starting to burn.
As-tu besoin?
Do you need us to get you out of there? Of course, bro! She said her face is starting to burn, and he's like, do we need to get you out of there? Are you okay? Are you gonna burn alive? Like, yep, she's burning alive. She's banging on it, burning alive. The machine malfunctioned during the test and burned her face off. This is how Lucia's face looked when she was taken out of the gym. Also, remember this is fake, so I gotta say that again before YouTube sees this and tries to strike it down. This is fake. Not real, but that is cool looking, gnarly as it is.
Melanie Klein, eminent journalist in the year 1933, almost 40 years before the theorization.
Meline, I'm not even gonna say the last name, I'm gonna fuck it up. Eminent philanthropist in the year 1933, almost 40 years before the theorization of Professor Jog.
Professor Jacques Lacan had the opportunity to encounter a case of the real
Oh,
in
wait.
one of her investigations for the newly emerging neuropsychiatric discipline. Without any prior reference, he was able to document what is known as the first case of an infant affected by the assault of the real. This case would later be revisited by Professor Miller in the conference on Julie Stolfeld in Baltimore 2 years ago in 1994, where irrefutable evidence was presented of the only existing case of a person who managed to survive the real from infancy and could maintain living in the most natural state of species on Earth. The case presented in 1933 by Melanie Klein addresses the case of the Austrian boy Karl.
The case
Whom
of
she
the
used
child
to
Carl.
exemplify certain issues of child development, unaware that it would be a fundamental case for the study of the real. and its impact on human beings from the symbolic plane of everyday reality.
That's wild.
This case, of which I will now provide some details, is that of a 4-year-old boy who, due to the poverty of his vocabulary and intellectual development, was at the level of a 15 or 18-month-old child. He lacked almost completely the adaptation to reality and emotional relationships with his environment. This child, Carl, lacked affection and was indifferent to the presence or absence of the mother. From the beginning, he had rarely shown distress, and even in an abnormally reduced degree, except for a certain special interest, which I will address shortly. He had almost no interest, did not play, and had no contact with
Still
his
doing
surroundings.
construction also. That's what I've been hearing this entire time. It's
Generally,
weird.
he articulated unintelligible sounds and constantly repeated certain noises.
Weird.
When he spoke, he used his limited vocabulary incorrectly. But not only was he unable to make himself understood, he also had no desire to, showing no interest in social communication. Furthermore, the mother sometimes clearly noticed in Carl a strongly negative attitude, expressed in that he often did precisely the opposite of what was expected of him. For example, if the mother managed to make him repeat some words along with her, Carl often completely altered them.
What?
Additionally, he would sometimes correctly repeat the words, but continued to repeat them incessantly and mechanically until everyone was fed up. Both forms of behavior differ from that of a child considered average in development. When a child within normal development shows opposition in the form of rebellion, and when he shows obedience, even accompanied by an excess of distress, he does so with some understanding and some reference to the thing or person involved. But in Carl's opposition and obedience, there was no affection or understanding at all. Moreover, when he hurt himself, he showed great insensitivity to pain and did not experience the universal desire in young children to be comforted and pampered. His fixation on aggression toward his own eyes was curious.
Aggression?
His physical clumsiness was also very noticeable.
So
He
he
could
hated
not
his own eyes.
grasp knives or scissors, so he had to be fed by a third party at all times.
What do
The
you mean?
impression I got from his first visit was that his behavior was very different from what we observe in children with expected development. He allowed his mother to leave without showing any emotion, and he followed me to the office with absolute indifference. There, he ran around without any purpose, and he trotted around me several times as if I were just another piece of furniture, showing no interest in the objects in the room. While running from side to side, his movements seemed to lack coordination. The expression in his eyes and face was fixed, absent, and lacking interest, compared once again with the behavior of children with psychotic symptoms. I recall children who, without having true anxiety attacks, during their first visit would timidly and obstinately retreat to a corner or sit without moving at the table with toys or without playing, pick up one object or another only to leave them immediately. In all these forms of behavior, the great latent anxieties are unmistakable. The corner or the table are places to take refuge from me. But Carl's behavior lacked meaning and purpose and had no relation to any affection or anxiety. Furthermore, at times, he would stand in the middle of the room and point to a corner, then proceed to make striking guttural sounds. I will now provide some details of Carl's previous history. His breastfeeding had been exceptionally unsatisfactory and disturbed because for several weeks, the mother had insisted on an unsuccessful attempt to breastfeed him, and the child had been on the verge of starvation.
Jesus.
Artificial feeding was then resorted to. Finally, when Carl was 7 weeks old, a wet nurse was procured for him, but it did not improve. He suffered from digestive disorders, early nearsightedness, and reddening of the eye sockets. Possibly his development was affected by the fact that, although he received all kinds of care, he was never given any special attention or symbolization of the surrounding objects.
That's wild.
The mother's attitude toward him had been from the beginning one of excessive anxiety.
I mean, yeah, the baby's not normal. It's showing every sign that it's not normal. There is 0 point in which that child has acted normal. That mother has
In
every reason to be worried.
1994, Professor Miller presented in his conference some captures from night vision cameras stationed in Innsbruck, Austria, the same city where Melanie Klein treated Carl before he fled after the 5th evaluation
bled?
session. In this presentation,
So he
the
ran away.
analyses of 3 images, possibly of the boy who may have been living outside the city for 60 years, were revealed.
So he
This
ran away
figure
and went to the city.
identified with the same name, Carl shows an elongated body devoid of all those characteristics of a human torso.
There's no way this is Carl.
There is an absence and or flattening of the chest and ribs. The arms and limbs are disproportionate, and the neck is very thin, impossible to maintain in position if it were an ordinary human being. A closer capture indicates that he may have lost a large part of his body fat.
Damn.
This, according to the latest studies by Jacques Lacan, extensively developed by Professor Miller, would indicate that jouissance would have consumed other areas of the body instead of the eye sockets.
But it evolved
In
him.
this way,
It didn't
the
kill him and
absence of
mutate him.
genitals and muscle development would be explained. The real would have infiltrated his entire body in order to survive within him, taking him as some kind of puppet. Knowing that all infants affected by this condition never manage to symbolize in the world or communicate properly, his body itself would have dispensed with a logical development for social contact.
Yeah.
From
Oh,
the
that's
same
fucking
case,
cool.
it can be concluded that both his eyes and mouth were not affected as expected.
looks like
Despite
he's
his
smiling
humanoid
at the camera.
appearance, they maintain, albeit deformed,
Oh my
the basic
god.
characteristics
I
of a
like this,
human
actually.
being. At this point, Professor Miller noticed that Carl was constantly smiling.
Exactly.
This is consistent with a very basic capacity for socialization,
He's
and what
happy. Someone's
Dr.
looking at him.
Rene Schmidt conceptualized within the first phase of life,
Oh, Lord.
culminating in the development of what is called social smiling around 3 months of age.
Social smiling.
In this phase, the infant can only partially recognize the mother's face as a shadow moving, but recognizes it as close and trustworthy. Probably Carl, in his over 60 years of existence, has slowly advanced in developing a smile that responded precariously to the world.
So
And
stupid.
thus, despite all the difficulties, he managed to limit the jouissance that should have completely consumed him, at best, during late adolescence.
So it looks like the real Henry just took over his body and then he slowly started to learn, but it took 60 years for him to learn how to fucking smile. Well, that was that. So, once again, we're gonna talk about it a bit because I like it as a concept because, right, it's not just, oh, these people are becoming monsters and dying. It's no, these people can't see the reality around them and it affects them to severe points. And then we even see what happens when the real actually invades somebody's body, that it turns them into this long, gangly creature. I like it. It's fucking dope. But, I know there's gonna be a season 3, so if you want me to react to that, of course, I will. Also, have a good day, good night, or afternoon, and I'll see you in the next one.